Henry Ford, the founder of Ford Motor Company, once said, "Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right." In this video, I'm going to explore that in a little bit more detail and talk about how it relates specifically to mine and my wife's retirement plans for next year. If you're new to the channel, my name is Steve. I'm 54. I turn 55 next year. My wife will be 60. We're looking at stopping working, selling the house, selling up everything, and putting the 100,000 equity that we think we may have in the property into a pot with my pension, my private pension, which is about 150,000. Put that all together with them looking at buying a property in France, and then we're going to figure out how we can stay there as long as possible. So that's the plan. So what's Henry Ford got to do with all this? For me, it's all about mindset, focus, visualization, whatever you call it. In formulating our plans and also making videos for this channel, where I've had quite a lot of kickback from people, I really didn't expect it. I've had some, quite personal comments, personal attacks, almost very, very rude comments. Really didn't expect it for this kind of channel. All I'm doing is just talking about my retirement plans. What is the problem? But it's made me think about a lot of books that I used to read about the positive mindset and positive thinking, and those I've gone back to a lot of those because it's helped me formulate a mindset that is indestructible. And when anything, if you look at doing anything big in your life, any sort of big changes, big positive changes, or just major changes in your life, I believe that visualization and having a laser-like focus on the outcome, the eventual outcome, is absolutely essential. And I used the same when I gave up drinking. When I gave up alcohol permanently 7 years ago, I made the decision to give it up, and then I had to spend the next couple of years at least trying to make that decision right and making sure I didn't go back to my old ways. And visualization for me was absolutely essential and key in following that through. I would imagine myself living a life that I couldn't possibly do with drinking. For instance, driving around at 2 in the morning picking up my kids because they couldn't get home after a night out. I wouldn't have been able to do because I was drinking every night, and or I certainly wouldn't be able to do sober. So it's things like that I want to talk about. Now, if I was to focus on all the reasons why our plan isn't going to work out or can't work out, or focus on just the numbers, then, and I've tried to explain this in previous videos, and a lot of people just don't seem to get it. If I was to focus on the reasons why we can't do something, or the reasons why we can't do our stopping working next year, there'll be a zero chance of it happening. Okay, this is the way I look at it. If I focus most of my attention and efforts onto exactly the kind of lifestyle that we want, exactly what we want to do, exactly how things are going to work, how can we make this work? That's the mindset I have when I think about any new plan or change in the plan. I think, how can we make that work? How can we do that? How can it work out? Not what problems is that going to cause, etc., etc. So by doing that, what I'm doing there is I'm making the odds above zero, and that's all I need. If it's above zero, it's going to happen because I'll just keep, as I say, laser-like focus on that visual. I was told years and years ago, at the time when we were being given all these books and everything else, I was told that if you have an absolute laser-like focus and you on something that you want to change or something you want to do, and you begin also with massive action towards your goal, then Providence moves. And I didn't really get what they meant at the time. When you look it up, Providence has I suppose a kind of religious aspect to it. What that could mean is it could mean that there's a higher power that moves in your direction, or for some it might mean the universe aligns to your wants and needs because your focus is so intense. For me, it might be a little bit of that. I know people who practice the law of attraction and manifestation will certainly believe that. It also could be a little bit biological. As far as I'm concerned, you've got something in the brain called the reticular activating system, which is in the brainstem, and what that does is it basically filters out certain things in your from all your senses. If your senses are constantly getting a barrage of information, all kinds of information, and the reticular activating system gives priority to certain things. Otherwise, your mind and your attention would just you would just go mad, and that's the filter that stops things from overloading you or overwhelming you. You can see this playing out when you perhaps think, okay, let's say you've got a relative who you haven't seen for years, a family member you haven't seen for years, and they're coming to visit you, and they drive a yellow car. So you'll be looking out and you'll see every single yellow car that drives past. You will never miss one of them because you might think it's them, right? And that's because there's an emotional, strong attachment to that image. It's the same system that is active during the cocktail party effect, which is where, you know, you're at a cocktail party, there's a lot of noise, a lot of people, music, that kind of stuff. You're engaged in conversation with somebody, and then somebody, you know, way over the other side of the room mentions your name. You'll hear it, and you'll look up and you'll look over. You know, you weren't listening out for your name, but subconsciously you were. Now, the subconscious is immensely powerful and does all sorts of things in the background, and if you program your subconscious by constantly focusing on what you want, not what you don't want, then eventually your subconscious will start looking out for ways to get what you want. The subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and something that's vividly imagined. You know, look this up, this is true. If you vividly imagine something and you put the right emotion to it and the right emotions attached to it, your subconscious will not let go. It will focus on getting to that. It will focus on making your reality match with that imagination, if you like. Otherwise, there'll be a mismatch. There'll be an inconsistency which it doesn't sit right with your subconscious. It has to match everything up. You know, these things work. I know they work. As I said before, I used these techniques, you know, when I gave up alcohol for good. Same with our retirement plans. You know, yes, I'm doing the numbers. Yes, I'm doing spreadsheets. I'm doing all that sort of thing. But in my mind, I know I said in another video, I've got balance sheets and I've got figures up and down and all that sort of thing. But also, my intense focus all day long is an image of me sitting outside my beaten up old property in France with a glass of non-alcoholic wine, you know, out on our bijou little table set in the garden, and that image is I can smell the surroundings, I can hear the surroundings, and I can just feel it. That is that intense, and of course emotionally it's massively important to me, so that's why I know it's going to happen and it's all going to work out, you know. So it's visions like that that's going to get me there. So, you know, if anyone's kind of watching that's thinking, oh, you know, how can I do this, I've heard from people who are watching who've got 3-4 times the money or the pot that I have, and are still umming and ahhing whether it can be done. And that all it comes down to is having a bit of belief. And if you haven't got that belief, just try and visualize what you want your life to look like. And that's what I've been doing. And I've been, as I said, delving back into these books that tell you how to do that. So when you hear me keep harping on in certain videos, you know, saying it's not all about the money, it's not all about the money, it's about the mindset. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I mean. You know, yeah, there's a lot of hard work involved. You know, as my last video alluded to. You know, we were cleaning out the garden, and we've got to move the chickens on. We've got to sort the garden out, reseed it, make it look like a family back garden. We've got to get rid of the shed. We've got to get rid of everything inside the shed, everything else. There's a whole lot of work we've got to do. So, you know, to get you through that, to motivate you is just like, you know, what motivates you to stay at a job where the boss is consistently shouting at you and working with colleagues that you hate and just doing a job that you hate and everything else. What makes you do that? You know, what made me stay working at the bank for 13 years and I hated every bit of it, pretty much. You know, there were some highlights, but that usually involved drinking heavily. So I don't know if that was a good thing, really. But, you know, what made me do that? It was more the fear of, if I didn't have that money coming in each month, what my life would be like. It was the fear. So what made me go self-employed in the end and finally get out of there was looking at the vision of no stress or reduced stress, even though the bills might be still mounting up. It wasn't about the money. I had to focus on something entirely different. So, you know, negative motivation can keep you doing something and can get you to a goal, but is it the right way to do it? Not in my book. I'd prefer to do it in a less stressful way. So yes, there are stressful things involved in doing this big move for us, but to get through all of that, I've got to think of the end goal, and the end goal is a positive, not a negative, if that makes sense. So look, I've barely scratched the surface of this massive subject. I may talk about it some more. It depends how this video goes, really. But I wanted to just give you an idea of the mindset around the choices that we're making and the plans that we're making, and why we're, you know, kind of doing it in the face of doesn't matter if when I say the dream's big enough, the facts don't count, and it's really true. You know, the numbers don't have to add up perfectly. You know, they add up pretty well, and you know, we'll make it work. And like I said, you know, things tend to move, things tend to come into your from outside of your peripheral vision, tend to come into focus, and opportunities seem to arise that didn't seem to be there before when you're laser focused on what you want to do. So anyway, if you're in a similar position, or if you're not in a similar position and you're just interested in following our journey, please subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it. Massive thank you to Defeful Blog for your continued super thanks and support for the channel. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. In the meantime, I've got a couple of major updates that I'm going to be reporting on in the next couple of videos, so look out for those. And for now, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.